can obtain it from the Attorney General.
Bob?
It will not surprise you to hear I think that's unrealistic. The truth is it used to be, when there was hiring and supervision authority, that the lawyers in the agency saw the director as their client to the exclusion of the rest of the District of Columbia. And so it is true that the Attorney General issues its big legal opinions, but every day, day in and day out, general counsel are giving legal opinions to their agency directors and the staff who work there. At the moment, they are tethered under the supervision of the Attorney General, who can coordinate that, who can see when there are differences, who can at least put them in a room together and hash out what the right answer would be. The chances of that happening under the proposed restructuring, I think, are minimal. Not to mention the fact that it's the practical realities of having a director hire, fire, pay, supervise, evaluate independently of every other. And as I understand the proposal for the director of the mayor's legal office has coordination but not supervision authority. So you can imagine the turnover that will occur each time an agency changes leadership, because they will want their own lawyers, people that they've had a relationship with before. And I can give you a laundry list, and we can debate this forever, but I also want to just touch on...
Our next panel.
I just want to touch on the U.S. government comparison. We are not the United States government. And the agency counsel, the general counsel in the agencies, are not sort of focused on just the policy. DOT, Federal Department of Transportation, is not just experts on the National Highway Safety blah, blah, blah Act. They also do contracting, they do personnel, they do this, they do that. That does not occur in the District of Columbia. So the 5 lawyers over at DDOT may be experts in transportation stuff, but they're not all experts in the contracting and personnel. And they need the connections to the other lawyers who are. And those connections, I think, on a very practical level, the day-to-day level, will be severed under that proposal.
Next question. Najee.
My name is Najee John. I'm an incoming student here. And my question somewhat goes back to the discussion you were having about the role of the Attorney General and the best interests of the municipality. And I'd like to know why it is that in this city, although the black population is now under 50%, the black population at the D.C. City Jail continues to be over 90%. Not to mention those of us who get shipped out to federal prisons and on parole and probation at disproportionate rates. So, whose best interest is that serving when the black population in this city is consistently being over-policed and over-prosecuted?
So I go back to the first point that I made. The prosecutions of major crimes, and any felony, and by the way, very significant misdemeanors, and for example, all the drug prosecutions, which represent a large part of what the problem that you're describing, are done by the U.S. Attorney's Office, not by the Attorney General's office. Our office, with respect to criminal responsibility, is juveniles, and then some misdemeanors, but primarily, for example, driving under the influence or things of that sort, quality of life prosecutions. I think what you're raising is a serious problem, a serious question. It's one that needs to be addressed in the Congress, which passes the laws that the U.S. Attorney prosecutes, as well. The City Council also passes felony laws that also are prosecuted by the U.S. Attorney. So the problem that you're raising, which is a real one, and I don't mean to minimize it, is not one that is the responsibility or caused by either the district government or the Attorney General's office.
My question is for the panel, Mr. Nathan. Not that I always take Dorothy Brazile serious. She made a suggestion that your prosecution and persecution of the Peace of Holics was basically for you running for office, and I'm saying for Vince Gray for a vendetta. How can we be sure that people in your position, who I admire to some degree, I don't dislike, I just don't like what you're doing.
I understand.
Being as though I had an audit that this council that Phil Mendelssohn was a part of dragged out for a year and a half politically, and I was cleared of any wrongdoing. And we have council members on the council like Yvette Alexander, who took her constituents fund and she used it to buy alcohol in liquor stores and things, and you didn't do nothing about it. Michael Brown, the lottery, and nothing's been done. But back to the question, how can we trust you if you're going to use your position to persecute people after they already been vindicated? And the second thing is in your office.
Wait, one
there are
question,
lawsuits
one
about-
question. Okay, fair?
Well, one way I can assure you, Mr. Moulton, that the civil case, which is not a prosecution, and certainly not a persecution, that we have brought is for non-political reasons, is that I am not going to be a candidate for Attorney General in the District of Columbia. I do not intend to stand for election. So nothing that I have done in my entire tenure, the 3 years I've been there, almost 3 years, including the lawsuit we brought against some of the principals of Peace and Hollings, was done for a political reason. And with respect to your reference to the mayor, I can assure you, as I have told repeatedly to the press, the mayor and the mayor's office had absolutely nothing to do with that civil lawsuit. They did not even know about it. They did not know about it until hours before we filed in court. This was done by career civil servants in our office who examined a great deal of documentation and made a judgment, which I shared because I had to make the final approval, that the city funds had been misused, and it is a responsibility of the office to seek the return of funds that have been misused, and we will continue to do it during the entire time that I serve.
It's all right, the Russians don't be-
Okay, we got one more question, and then we're going to have, everybody gets their minute for your wrap-up, okay?
It seems to me that the elephant in the room is politics. And when you talk to most citizens, what they want in an attorney general is a lawyer's lawyer. They want someone who they believe and have confidence in is going to represent the legal interests of the District of Columbia. They don't want a politician, even though we know politics and people skills are part of the job. How do we now, knowing that the petition is going to be issued the middle of November, knowing now that it's going to be a partisan election, you're going to have to run in a party primary in April, how do we now not wait and say, okay, so-and-so went and picked up the petition? How do we now go and recruit some of the best minds in the legal field? How do we assure that the office in its first year doesn't become, full of politics? I take your point, Mr. Nichols, when you say that I could be an honest broker, but I think that most citizens in the District of Columbia have a different memory of your tenure as Attorney General.
All right, but you asked a good question, and let's start with Phil.
Well, implicit in your question, even though you disagree with this, is that politics is a bad thing. Now, I know we read in the paper, we read about politicians, and we don't like that, but I look at politics a little bit differently, and that is being sensitive to and representative of the community. Being representative of the community, as you know, no community is monolithic. But still, those of us who are elected, we try to gauge what the community wants as we perceive it and be responsive to the community. I think that's all a good thing, and that's part of what we would have with an elected Attorney General. So, implicit in your question is that politics is bad, even though you did say in your question that we do want a person who's got, I forget how you put it, you didn't say people skills, political skills. I don't frankly know how you have somebody who has political skills and you then don't turn around and say, well, they're being political. But I think that's all to the good. When it's not to the good is when a person doesn't have principles. And so it's all about a political judgment without any principle, without any value behind it. But that's really kind of a different issue. So, I don't know, that's my answer.
Anybody else?
I think the forum here tonight is one way to try to generate interest in this job and make the point about its importance. And frankly, I think there's a responsibility for each of us as a civic responsibility to try to talk to people and encourage people who would be good in the job to seek it out. I think there are a lot of things that we can do. I think I would go back to what Irv said about the Hatch Act amendment. I think that would be a good thing to make sure that we can encourage people who are experienced members of the current Office of the Attorney General to be interested. I think there are a lot of things that all of us need to do to make sure we have a good cadre of candidates and that we elect one.
The one point I would make is that politics involves money. As soon as you run for office, you have to generate money in order to be an effective candidate. And I don't know what the current state of the law is, the council, with what they can accept. I mean, I always was very unhappy about the fact the council has approval rights over any contract that's in excess of $1 million. It automatically injects politics into contract matters, which ought not to be. But unless the council can regulate how money is generated for the race of Attorney General, and you're going to have politics, you're going to have influence, and you're going to have some potentially very significant shortcomings in the office.
I want to say that I agree with what Dorothy has said. That is that we need to look both within the government and outside for a lawyer's lawyer to be the Attorney General. It is a very difficult job. It requires great judgment and skills, lawyerly skills. I, for one, have been soliciting folks to run for the office, people both within the government and outside, people in private practice who are earning good livings but have the experience that's necessary. I think you need both civil and criminal experience. You need to have a wide range of legal experience. You do have to be able to operate in a political environment. And of course, you do have to have some management skills to deal with an office of 700. I encourage everyone to talk to people who you think of as lawyers, to consider this job. It is a tremendous service to the district to serve. It's a great honor to serve. I feel very honored to be appointed to serve. It's going to be a great honor for someone to be elected to serve. It's going to be one that has great responsibility. We're here where we have great law schools, like this one in the district. We have professors. We have great law firms here. We have people in the public interest bar, and we have great lawyers within the government. I'm very hopeful. I think your question sort of assumes whether we should have an elected Attorney General. That judgment's been made, as Shelley said at the beginning. We're going to have that. We need to make the best of that. We have a lot of good people who could do it, and I encourage anyone who, after hearing this and hearing all the responsibilities and the opportunities that are presented by it, to run, and I ask you to encourage others that you think would do well to take the plunge and to run for the office. And then, most importantly, we need an educated electorate to pick among those people who are running, people who are real lawyers, who are honest public servants, who want to do the best for the district and have made it clear how they will do it and have the experience, the judgment to do it. And I think we can leave it to the intelligence of the electorate to pick a really good person for that job.
So while